Howdy, folks. We're back. We had Thursday and Friday off because of logistical stuff, and I was traveling to New York City to go see the Yankees win in a rather sweltering Yankee Stadium on Saturday. It's like I think I lost.
Is that a good schmitz in there, Michael?
I think I lost about 10 pounds, and I didn't. And I didn't get my traditional kosher beef hot dog because Saturday was the Sabbath. And the one stand that was at the stadium apparently was run by Jewish people, and it was the Sabbath, so they weren't there. So I had to slum and get a Sabret's hot dog, which was okay, but not great. So
yeah, those are street hot dogs. They're not.
Yeah. At least it was inside, so I know it was clean. And
it's not a dirty water dog, but it's just a step above.
Yeah, I'll just say this: it's like these people, these entrepreneurs outside of every stadium when it comes to the summer, who sell water bottles that they get for about 12 cents for $3. They should all be arrested because they're not even selling cold water bottles. They're like lukewarm water bottles, and it's $3 a pop.
Beggars can't be choosers, Michael. That's
that doesn't really bother me.
It's predatory capitalism. Deal with it.
I brought a Yeti thermos with ice water that was nice and cold after the game, so those people can go bleep themselves. Okay, Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
I wanted to mention the passing of Bill Russell. I'm not saying this because I'm a Celtics fan, because I was a Knicks fan and I hated all the Celtics, but I didn't see Bill Russell play, but my dad did. And so my dad filled me in on what a great player he was. And, his 11 championships in 13 years, besides what he did in college, he is the greatest winner ever in sports. And it really doesn't get mentioned enough. And you could shake your head, Mike, but it's true.
Oh, no. I'm not shaking my head in disagreement.
I thought you were disagreeing. Oh,
no.
Some people don't put him in like the top 10 for the NBA. Like these people are making a big mistake. They don't understand.
They're high.
He could be in 5 in some. What they don't understand is he did understand winning. Like he gave lectures on it. He spoke about it. He even would help out other players, performers, anybody who would, he would reach out to people all the time and kind of help them with that. So he understood the mental part of it. And so like it's a big loss. He was truly a giant in his field besides being a big guy.
Two national championships at USF, an Olympic gold medal, 11 championships with the Celtics in 13 years. I heard, I think it was Bill Simmons talk about his, the one championship he lost. He had severely sprained his ankle, but still played and lost to the St. Louis Hawks.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And the other one they lost to the 76ers, I think, in Game 7. So 11 championships. He's the greatest winner, but not only that. I mean, a guy who spurred social change. He marched with King. He backed Muhammad Ali. Like all these things. He faced racist attacks in Boston. They vandalized his house and things of that nature. But he got through it, and he was just a fantastic, arguably the best player in professional sports, period. I mean, in terms of championships, 11 championships, nobody tops that. Nobody.
Yeah. No, I mean,
not even Tom Brady.
No.
But can we go to the dark side here? Because we need to talk about this. Just mention it. This is why the NFL is a whorehouse. And I hate to say that, but it is, because the punishment that came down on Deshaun Watson, a guy who, we know what he was accused of. We know what he settled, like with non-disclosure agreements to how many women, 2 dozen, 3 dozen. And the NFL comes down today.
The NFL wasn't, the arbitrator, Mike, the arbitrator came down. I have to be careful here. The arbitrator came down with it, so now the ball it's in Goodell's court.
Yeah,
right. Russ and I had discussed this before the show to earlier today, and this is all coming down to, and the NFLPA literally did a joint press release yesterday with Deshaun Watson saying that they would, we implore the NFL to abide by what the what the arbitrator will say. We will, and we hope the NFL will too as well, which tells me they had somewhat of an idea of what the ruling was going to end up coming, and it was going to be in favor. Basically, at this point today, daring the NFL commissioner to basically try to put up to basically say to him, we want to see you try to do a higher penalty at this point.
Well, I mean, I hope, and we know how sort of lily-livered and spineless Roger Goodell has been over the years. I hope he tells the arbitrator to go bleep himself, because he deserves at least a year for this stuff. I mean, he suspended, who was it, Ridley? We
talked about this as well. Stefan Ridley, Calvin Ridley from the Atlanta Falcons, a year for sports betting. And there's another thing. This is optics at this point for the National Football League. To me, I know Goodell's background obviously is as an attorney himself, but you have to look at this now from the larger perspective of your entire fan base, of which a lot, especially amongst the female fan base in this circumstance, who will see this. And if you are soft on this and don't go higher, I agree with you, Michael. I think if Goodell should come in at about a full season suspension. Will it end up at that and at the end? I'm sure there will be some form of negotiation. But the NFL in this circumstance has to at least say, and I think this is important from optics, even if they are the titan of sports in this part of the world, they have to come down hard on this to say that they did. And then if things get negotiated from that point, then we'll see what happens.
Here's the other bad part of this that really got exploited. So it's bad enough that this case is there. It's bad enough that it's, was still pending for all this time. Now they finally have a resolution of sorts. You got to wait 3 more days. But when they let Cleveland sign him, Cleveland made sure his first year salary is $1 million. So this way, the games that he misses minimal salary. And the arbiter didn't even put a dollar financial fine on him, which I find deplorable, because again, he's making like $40 and $50 million years after this. But the year that they knew he would have a suspension, well, the PA and the league is fine with him signing for $1 million. So this way he's only losing money, and that's disgusting. Sorry.
Okay.
No, for sure.
I
For
vented
sure.
my
All right.
spleen. Go ahead.
Let us start. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, August 1st, 2022.
I'm Michael Lagello, and I'm really tired this morning.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Anthony Mingioni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. We were off last week quite a bit. A whole bunch of different things converged. We appreciate you guys' patience. And there wasn't a lot of news to talk about anyway, but we are back. We have a lot of stuff going down now, and we will be back this week to discuss everything with you as it goes. I think I kind of want to start with Kadri today, because there's a lot of different ways to go, but I think the Kadri thing is about to explode. And I know we've said that before, but it does seem more and more like he's going to be an Islander. And that's not just me, obviously talking. There's a lot of people talking right now. And this is going to, again, put more and more oomph into the Metro Division, which is the Metro Division is getting more and more stacked all the time. And it's incredible when you think about the players that have been added to the Metro Division just this offseason alone to what was already maybe the best division in hockey. So Metro's there. If this happens, and I'm going to assume it's going to happen, because this is a very typical Lou Lamoriello quietness going on right now.
Well,
does this fix the Islanders, Russ? Does it?
Well, so a couple things. Bringing Kadri to the team helps them. They're going to lose a good player. I don't think they're losing Josh Bailey or any of these other players that teams don't want. I think they're going to end up losing Beauvillier in this to make this happen, to make other things, salaries and other things go away. And if they do, they'll be a little better. But it's not like Nazem Kadri is going to give them an automatic championship. They'll be a potential playoff team, but depending on what they lose. And then here's the other thing that they may lose in the long run. If they bring in Kadri and sign him long term, that is going to complicate things with Matt Barzal, who right now is unsigned and going to go through the same thing Johnny Gaudreau did potentially. And that is another potential landmine for the Islanders. But yeah, does it make it better? Sure.
Yeah, you're giving up a 20. If Russ is right, and I think he is, because who wants to take Josh Bailey, or who wants to? They won't buy out Kyle Palmieri because he's got 3 years left, and nobody's going to take him after he had a bad year. Beauvillier's 25 years old. He had an okay year last year. He had a better year the previous year. He's got another year after next season at like $4 million. That plus what they have in cap space remaining might be enough to get Kadri signed. But, okay, you've got Dobson you have to sign. You've got Romanov you have to sign. Even if they get both of them on bridges, that's probably going to take up $6 of the $9 million in cap space that they have. So is $7 million enough for Kadri? Maybe, but how much better are they? You're trading away a 25-year-old Beauvillier for a 32-year-old Kadri,
who outside of Trotz probably goes back to the 20-something goals that he had before.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, honestly, I would rather have a player entering his prime than a player who's probably at the end of his prime. You know, now they're a team, Anthony, that I think their window is a year or two. So that fits what they're looking for.
Yeah, this is definitely a push all in now from Lou. I don't think there's any question if they're going Kadri, and if they do in fact shed Beauvillier. I do think right now they're trying to go through a lot of different, maneuvers and permutations to probably avoid that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure they're trying to move Bailey. I'm sure they're trying to move, other players to try to make that work. But in the end, it's going to be difficult. Now, do they have their 2023 first round pick still, or is that traded off?
I'm checking.
That has substantive, that they still have it. That has substantive value. Then
I think they still have it, but
there's the potential for, again, they had a rough year last year. It comes down then to the general manager of the other team saying, are you willing to bet against Lamoriello's team being successful again this season? Things kind of fall apart, and then you hit lottery goal potentially with that first round pick.
They have all their picks.
They have all their picks. So that may be, again, I think in many ways that's probably where Lou is probably getting hung up right now.
One thing about lottery goal, because it really hasn't been talked about, Eck, Arizona's on the road for like their first 20 games of the year this year because of the new setup. That is almost setting them up for a perfect tank, if you think about it.
Yeah, no, really, they are in a prime spot for that. And it's almost impossible to, you just got to go for the second worst. But again,
Adam Fantilli.
A true tank is still only 20%, right? It's still only 20% to Bedard. You got a good chance that you're going to get, I want to back that on Chris from Long Island, who says Palmieri had a good second half of the year. He did, and I actually don't want to go negative on the Islanders, Chris. You put the chat room that we're all going negative.
Leave that to me.
I'm actually not going to go negative on the Islanders, and I'm going to tell you why. I've actually heard, Beauvillier might be going, but I've actually heard that the trade they are making or they're trying to work out is not just a dump trade, but a trade to actually bolster their defense as well. So they're not. So why this is taking so long is it would have been simple to just like Flyers trying to move JVR in a first round draft pick or whatever. It would have been simple to make that kind of trade. They're not doing that. They're moving money for what they feel is a really strong transitional young defenseman. I was told that doesn't.
Money? They have to clear money. They only have
they're
$9
clearing.
million.
Right. No, but they're clearing enough money along with to actually grab this player as well. I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about like a Chikrin or something like that. I'm just talking about like a.
Okay, but let's say they had the $9 million. Let's say they clear 4 more on Beauvillier and even 2 more on somebody else like Matt Martin, whatever. They still have to pay their RFAs and get Kadri and this mystery defenseman. That's going to be.
I mean they do, and that's why this is taking as long as it's taking, and that's why this is as quiet as it is. There's no question that Lou's involved, and Lou has this history of if you talk about a deal being out there, I'm not going to talk about the deal.
See,
I think that's also changed a little bit. I talked to somebody about that, and he said even Lou's admitted that it's hard in this situation to not know it's the Islanders. It's a basic, simple math thing, right? There are teams out there.
Well, one miscalculation that Lou and I don't honestly, I don't care how good of a tandem and them working together is. He made a mistake not trading off Varlamov with his $5 million salary when you have Sorokin as your number one, making $4 million for $9 million on your goaltending when you're in trouble like they are in terms of cap space is mismanagement. They should have traded Varlamov if they. I know he had a limited no trade, but they should have traded him. Now it's probably too late to do that, and that ship has passed. So
now Chris says they're 11.2 under the cap. I know I asked Mike this morning. He said 9. Even if they're 11.2, this really makes it tough because you're paying Dobson 4.5. You're probably paying Romanov 3.5. Like it's just they're going to have to be underpaying Kadri to a certain degree to what his original demands were. Like that's a lot of things to fit in. And you're now also going to stop the growth of Robin Salo, who could play third pairing D-man. But if you bring in this other D-man, then he's going to be odd man out, and he's going to be back in Bridgeport too.
Right, and I think that the interesting thing about the Island is like sure, Varlamov, great to move him. They tried to move him. He turned down more than just the Oilers, I was told, in different situations. But that's the one that's been publicly out there. He's turned down the Oilers, and he's turned down the Oilers, and he could turn on. And Lou this is like it or hate it. This is Lamoriello, who's not going to sit there and force a guy to make to. He knows he negotiated that trade. That he's not going to sit there and hard. He's not going to go hard on a guy. He's not going to be like, oh, you got to trade me. He's not. That's not the way Lamoriello works. He's one of the few left that has like a code to him in the NHL, and that's something that is also. Probably working against him to a degree, but at the same time, in the end, at the end of the day, he believes in what he does. He won Stanley Cups, and he believes that his code works, and that will make people want to come to play for the Islanders. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. So this is a real big, balancing the line type situation right now.
The only thing I'll say though is right when we're saying he's won Stanley Cups. We're kind of doing the same thing that used to be done with Glenn Sader. Like, hey, he's won Stanley Cups. It's been a long time, Eck.
Yes, no, it has been a long time.
A very long time.
And that is always you are what you've done lately, and he hasn't done anything lately. I agree with that. Although, I guess the argument you can make is he did take the Islanders with Barry Trotz, to a really high level. Mm-hmm. They did fall off, of course.
In COVID years.
In COVID years, but bringing him to a high level in COVID years, I don't think that matters. I mean, I honestly don't. I think
some people
everybody had the same rules, Mike. I mean, everybody played the same.
No, everybody had the same.
I'm saying some people have criticized Tampa Bay in terms of winning Stanley Cups in COVID years.
I don't buy that either. Right?
I don't. But I'm just saying their success. The fact that they were shortened seasons with a veteran team has been pointed out as a factor for the Islanders making it as far as they did.
But that's fine. I don't even – that's in the past too. Like we are where we are now. And, again, Lamoriello, this is his third team that he's trying to now recapture the cup stuff with because, he was with the Devils again until he left. Then he goes to Toronto, and now he's trying it again. Like it's just at some point you can't mention the cup stuff anymore because
and
Glenn Sader. It used to be.
And remember, he was brought to Toronto for one simple reason: as a check to that egomaniac Mike Babcock. That's the whole reason he was brought in there. So Brendan Shanahan didn't have to deal with Babcock running roughshod over everybody. And he served his role, but he also did some things in Toronto, like not get Nylander signed with a year left before his contract and a few other things. Where, the whole benefit of Lou Lamoriello is his ability to get players signed under good contracts. And in Toronto, he did that with Kadri. He did that with Riley early on. He didn't do it with the guys, Matthews, Marner, Matthews, Marner, Nylander. He didn't have the opportunity with two of them, but the one that he did have the opportunity that he could have set the stage for, he didn't do it. And that's one of the things I think he'll always be remembered for in Toronto negatively.
I think they may have wanted him to serve that part, but you don't really bring Lou Lamoriello in. He's not going to be the Babcock. He's not going to be the Babcock.
He was the check on Babcock.
He was, but I think that was a natural role he didn't end up playing for sure. And I think that they may have intended that too. I definitely think they intended that too. But Lou also is not going to. He's not going to play a company line game, with you. So if you think he's going to toe a company line for you, it's not going to happen. And I think that's what's good in the Island. I think then that's why it is interesting. The whole Barry Trotz firing, when we think about it, when we put it all into perspective to what's happening now, is a kind of an interesting game to play because I played that out in my head a couple times this weekend thinking about it. Here's a guy who made them really good, really fast, and did improve their defense. They best defensive team in the league for a couple of years. Doesn't hurt to have two really good goalies, which they've had the last year or so. But they also were a team that was built off of taking that defense and transitioning it to forward, right? And what happened here is the loss of some guys like Taves, and others, the other defensemen lost their transition games. So when you have the strong defense, you can keep the puck out of the net. The offense suffers because you couldn't transition it. In the beginning, they had both. They had the good defense and they could transition it out. So I think that's where Lou kind of felt like this style that was being played by Trotz wasn't going to work anymore because they did not being able to. You cannot.
Okay, but you know what? I don't disagree with you. But then why in the world did you bring back Ross Johnston? Why did you double down on Matt Martin? Why did you keep Cal Clutterbuck there?
Culture, guys. You know that.
Yeah, but there's
Lou is all about that.
I know. There's only so many culture guys you can have on a team these days.
Comfort too.
Yeah, but this is the thing, and we've all said this. Okay, they did not make the right moves, and we said it at the time, and now in retrospect, obviously, Devin Taves for a couple second round picks to Colorado. That they couldn't sign him because they couldn't afford him. Then they trade Leddy. Okay. Getting Alexander Romanov isn't exactly like you're getting Torrey Krug in terms of.
No, but he's a good defenseman.
It's a really good pick.
He's not his puck carrying, Russ, is not his forte. He's a good defenseman. Don't get me wrong. I think they're better for adding him, but they really needed somebody to sort of replace what Taves and what Leddy were, and
he's
they
not
really have.
That's true.
Yeah, they really have it.
I really do. I don't know. I'm just going to disagree on. I think he's a better puck carrying defenseman than you're giving him credit for.
I think he's better than what Mike's giving him credit for, but I don't think he's as good.
I'm not saying he's one of.
He's not as good. I'm saying he's not as good as Leddy. He's not as good as Taves. Is he good? Yeah, but he's not. They needed to get somebody who could replace the guys that they traded, because with those guys they went to conference finals.
Yeah, but all around. He's better than Leddy Romanov, I think, at this point. And I think that
I don't agree.
I definitely do. And
he's young.
I would say his ceiling is higher than Nick Leddy. I would agree there. I think he has a lot of talent, but I don't know if I'm ready to go there at this point right now.
Because of what we've seen. You guys aren't wrong based on what we've seen in the NHL. But the also real reality is that the way he's been played in Montreal has been really pretty horribly.
Right.
And if they played him, if he gets full time in the Island,
I agree.
I would concur.
I think you see him on the Island with full time become quickly better than Leddy.
They were playing Brett Kulak ahead of him in the playoffs, which is a joke.
Right, and that won't happen. So I mean, that was a really sneaky move by Lou. A really good move by Lou. I
like that trade. Absolutely, I agree.
That was a tie. So we're going to see how this plays. This is going to play out. Probably it could take all week, I was told, but it's going to play out. And
here's something else I want to point out to Chris, because when we're talking about cap, Martin's 1.5, Clutterbuck's 1.7. Yeah, they might be minimal contracts by themselves. It adds up.
Cizikas is 2.5.
Right. It all adds up when all of a sudden
in a vacuum. I say this in many ways, Russ, like what the Flyers do as well, is that you can make a justification for each signing, but then the compiled effect limits what you can do to improve the team after a while.
And your starting goaltender who Eck picked for the Vezina and the Hart and had a great year. Don't get me wrong, Sorokin had a great year.
For the Hart,
he's making $4 million, and your backup is making $5 million. So cap management is up their rear end. It's really bad.
But
they've got
and I know you come from a place that doesn't believe in goaltending, but having two solid goaltenders is going to keep them in everything. Like they never have to worry about going to the backup.
They'll be in games, yes.
And that'll
keep them competitive the whole year.
They were 23rd in goals or something like that last year.
They've got 7 forwards, 7 who are making more than $4 million. That's bad cap management. It really is.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, they don't have a lot that are making like more than $10 million. They're going about it a different way and spreading it out more. They're much
until next year, because if they sign Barzal, he's going to be around $9 million.
Right. That's going to change. Now Lou back way back in 2016 said about Kadri some good things. Like he said, there's a quote from the Isles Fix Twitter, which I liked. It says, he's not afraid to give it. What you respect the most about him is he can take it. He's not a retaliatory type of player, but he'll get you at the right time and at the right place. I know this is what Lou said. He's one that I wouldn't mind going into a foxhole with. So this is how Lamoriello feels about him. So understand this. Whether you agree with the quote or not, this is how Lou feels about him. And when Lou feels good about somebody, he makes it happen. And that's why I just think this is happening.
He can feel any way he wants to feel about Nazem Kadri. And remember, those comments, and I was probably at the press conference that he announced that was after he had signed Kadri to a 6-year deal for $4.5 million. So he was feeling good at that point because he got him for undervalue.
Right.
I don't care what Lou Lamoriello feels about Nazem Kadri. He can say every nice thing in the world. Nazem Kadri, and he won a Stanley Cup this year, and I congratulate him on it. And he kept his powder dry. He didn't do anything stupid, although if you ask Jordan Binnington, he did. He has screwed teams at the worst possible time 3 times in his career. I don't care what he does. He could be.
He screwed the Toronto Maple Leafs 3 times, Michael. That's what happened.
He also screwed the Colorado Avalanche, Anthony, if you remember.
He didn't that, though. In reality, did he?
No, he didn't. No,
he really didn't.
Yes, he did.
He really didn't.
No, he didn't.
Jesus. By getting suspended for taking out Justin Falk last year.
There was no guarantee of winning last year. They won with him this year.
They won with him this year.
I just said that, but I also said that he screwed Toronto twice and he screwed Colorado once by being an idiot at the worst possible time.
Clean your glasses. They have a haze on them. You're not seeing them correctly.
I don't know. I don't want to get into Murray at $4 million versus Varlamov at $5 million and who's a better goalie. That's a discussion that'll take us 3 days to talk about. So I apologize.
We're not going to go into there. You're wrong.
But we're not going to get into that one at all.
Murray at 4 is a starter. Their backup is making 1.8.
Says the guy who always talks about how our goalies.
It's a great tandem, right? It's great.
If goalies are hurt, Mike Benny. Okay, let's go away from that. All right, let's leave this. Let's leave the Kadri thing. So the Kadri thing is going to be. The Kadri thing is there. We're going to see it happen. I think it's going to happen. It's going to make the division better. Again, like Anthony and Russ, like what I wrote today. The Devils and the Flyers who are standing still. Sometimes, if you're not moving forward,
the Devils aren't quite standing. They didn't quite.
I can't say they're standing still.
Devils have made Devils have made some moves. The Flyers ostensibly are more in a stationary position where they're trying to cover for the not having Ryan Ellis. Trying to make a cultural change by bringing in a Delorier. The Flyers. I mean, how exactly to describe them? It's like I don't. At this point now they're confounding. It's what direction that they are going in. It's like it's not a tank. It's very obvious. You don't bring in John Tortorella for a tank, but
right.
We all would agree in this case it's a reshuffle the deck and see what happens. I mean, you want to call it they called it an aggressive retool. It feels more like an aggressive reboot than anything.
Yeah.
So, but actually, Esmir has a good point here. Like he says, the Devils are fighting with Jesper Bratt, and they are, which makes no sense. They're $2 million apart. Like, just pay the middle fee and give.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be resolved.
Just get it over with. It shouldn't have gotten to this point.
This is Josh Harris. Josh Harris penny pinching bull crap is what
it's silly. It's silly.
I mean, and now, okay, it's one thing. It's one thing if you don't want to get this guy signed long term. If you're going to penny pinch all the way to him walking away as an unrestricted free agent, if you don't believe in the guy, then trade him. I mean, but they don't. They clearly
they absolutely have shown every time I've talked to them that they believe.
No, they like him.
They believe him. They believe him. They love him. They're not. They refused to. They refused. People tried to talk to him about trading for him. They refused to talk about it. They were not going to move him in any situations. I know that for a fact. People tried to trade for him. So yeah, they're going to get this done.
But you're right, Ak. Even however you want to phrase it, the Devils are in trouble simply because the division is so much better that they're still going to be like probably in the same spot, even though they may be better too.
And I'm not going to say they didn't try to get better because I think they tried harder to get better than the Flyers tried to get better. But I think
they did. They did.
It didn't really work out in a lot of situations. So
they're $8 million. They're $8 million under the cap, and they have almost $10 million dropping off in forwards dropping off after this year in Tatar, Janssen, and Haula. So signing Bratt to a 7 or 8 year deal, probably in the $7 to $7.5 million range, it's not going to kill them against the cap. It's not going to kill them financially. Plus, they have a couple defensemen that are expiring as well. So, I mean, you know, they're probably going to have to replace those guys. But this is a no-brainer. I just don't understand what's taking so long when it comes to Jesper Bratt.
I do think, to answer the chat room, I don't think it's a situation where Bratt wants to go UFA. I think it's a situation where Bratt wants more of a AAV on a long-term deal.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the Devils want to pay him less than that on a long-term deal. And I think that's all it's about.
Yeah, Josh Harris spends money on the 76ers. Look at what the Devils have done the last few years and what they signed Dougie Hamilton and they've signed their guys, Heishier and Hughes. They have not gone out go ahead.
I'm gonna partially disagree with you, Mike, in this one, because it's like I think the Devils have. I think Josh Harris has tried to do like they were very high on. I mean, the Hamilton thing was a big signing. They were in on Gaudreau very hard, even harder than the money he got in Columbus. Everyone was told. I mean, they have, and that's all other players that have come down the line. Other goalies they tried to get goalies that they lost out in high goalies. They I don't think that, and I mean,
I don't think I agree with you. Like, I don't think it's penny pinching at all. It's just I agree. I think they were really close to getting Gaudreau, and we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Well, I think they're penny pinching with Bratt because like
they are, but they're also that's everybody's doing that with that kind of free agent right now. Everybody.
No. Like, but he had 73 points. This is not like a guy who had like 45 points. So you're like, okay, look, we want to pay you the bottom of the scale. There's no chance in hell anybody would ever agree to 4.1 for Jesper Bratt. Nobody.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I
think this is a classic. We will see the number somewhere in the middle range.
Right, but to shoot at that number is just embarrassing when the guy had 73 points and 26 goals, and he had 16 goals the 2 years before that. Like he was their leading scorer.
But this is also what's happening with like Mangiapane in Calgary too. Like he
wasn't the team's leading scorer. There's a difference.
Right, but
you're talking about also a Stanley. You're also opportunity. You have a Stanley Cup contending team versus, again, in this circumstance, a Devils team that is still scratching and clawing and trying to get their way up the ladder.
Yeah,
that play. I think that plays somewhat of a role here too, Ek, and Russ.
Yeah, I think you're right too. I think you're right, and I have heard that what Vince is saying in the chat room that Bratt wants a shorter term deal. I've heard that too. And the Devils want people long term. The Devils are in that situation when you lose out on free agents, you immediately look towards you got to sign people long term because you're afraid
so
you're
what
going to
Mike
get
is
people.
Saying is true. When you want them longer term, you're going to have to pay them a little bit more to stay there because it's New Jersey.
Right. But you also have to look forward and possibly free agency in the future. If you swung and missed this year,
yes,
you do want to at least leave yourself some monicum of space, and that's one of the reasons. Even though they're shooting low, I wouldn't take as much. I mean, I get the player will take offense to it, but I would be like, that number is not going to be there.
Well, he's 2 years away from unrestricted free agency. If you're talking a 7 or 8 year deal, you're buying 5 or 6 years of unrestricted free agency. You're going to pay through the nose for that. And if he's asking for 7.5, 8, 8.5, that's normal. That's par for the course. So, I mean, if they're balking at that and then instead, so say they don't want to pay him that, then he's probably saying, okay, I'll sign a 2-year deal. And that walks him to unrestricted free agency.
Which is a problem for them.
Which is a problem for them because they want to retain him, but it will get him at a lower rate. Pay the piper. It's either you want the guy or you don't want the guy. And if you want the guy, sign him long-term. If you don't want the guy, trade him.
Yeah.
That's it.
And the rumors are out there, like people are talking about in the chat room. The rumors are out there that he wants to buy the Flyers, and he's been interested in buying the Flyers to own the Flyers and the Sixers, right? And that's been happening for a while. In which case, he would get out of the Devils situation. But I think that
he owns that building too, doesn't he? He owns the Rock, I believe.
He might,
or he owns a piece of it.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, and and then there's talk about in Philadelphia. There's talk that the Sixers are going to build a new stadium downtown.
It's not talk. I mean, it's not even talk at this point right now. Right. It's plans. Everything's been laid. Everything's been laid out. I mean, even the arena name, at least initial name. This isn't a conversation. This is their chips are now on the table.
They're going to do that.
Yeah.
So maybe tell the Devils to Jim Ball silly.
So that's not a guy who's afraid to spend money. I mean, I would be living in Philly all my life. I would be terrified to build a 76ers stadium downtown if I was there.
Oh yeah, that would be bad.
But the fact that they think they can do it, and he's obviously, I mean, the Devils are. It's interesting. There are some teams that can afford to swing and miss, and there's some teams that can't. You know what I mean? The Flyers can afford to swing and miss. They feel like they can, at least. I think that's getting less and less true. But they feel like they have a fan base that's solid enough to be able to, that they're always going to be there. This is the way. This is their belief, and I'm not saying they feel like they can.
You'll see that at the start. I think in October when we see what the arena looks like, when we see what the seating situation looks like, especially for the first couple of games. Everybody always invariably comes out for the first few games, and then attendance may wane. If they start off and things are not great, then this is something that we got that has to be they have to start reevaluating.
Right. And Philadelphia fans are eternal optimists in general. They tend to be, this is the town of Rocky. This is the town that if they come out and they're just killing it for some reason, like if they get on a 5-game winning streak or 6-game winning streak.
Behind them. There's no question.
We'll get behind them until they're not.
The Newark
it's tough. It's going to be tough, and especially in the current economy and everything right now. People lay out for Eagles tickets, no question.
Right.
Yeah. Phillies, if they're in a postseason run, they'll lay out for. But again, in the economy we're in, there is some limitations with regards to how much money people are willing to lay out for all four sports.
Well, there's two problems with this idea for the stadium where they're putting it. I worked for years at a company that I used to have to go to Market East, and they just put a lot of money into it, redesigning it like $1 billion or something, but a lot of money.
I mean, my wife works downtown. She's at Jefferson, and she'll tell you. Everybody knows it's going to be an absolute. It's in many ways the way this is. We have to look at the Brooklyn situation too.
Yeah, I'm
right.
like,
why that? Because they'll only have 9,000 parking spots.
I mean, why would you want to move? I mean, I think Philadelphia has a pretty good setup with the football stadium, the baseball stadium, and the hockey setup.
But the Sixers, again, they lease to they have to pay a lease to the Flyers.
Okay. Yeah, the Sixers have
That's the thing. The Flyers really have the building. Yeah, they want their own barn. I mean, they were talking about also putting one. They were talking about I know there was plans to put the arena down on Columbus Boulevard, right next to the river, because then it would be a relatively easy transfer between their practice facility in Camden and their arena. But they're gunning for Market Street because they think they want it downtown. They want the.
But how likely is it that Harris can buy the Flyers away from Comcast?
Not likely at all.
He may want to, but I don't.
The Flyers and Comcast are linked, for as little effort I think sometimes the Comcast puts into the Flyers, they definitely see it as a major important thing to own them. And more than they should. It's amazing. I mean, I've been through a lot with Comcast and the Flyers individually and separately and together over the years. And there's definitely a link. I don't know if there's anything like if Ed Snyder said you can never sell them or something. I don't know if there's something that we don't know about. There's like an inside deal, but Comcast acts like they can never sell the Flyers. Like that's how they act.
My feeling is the Comcast and the Flyers will just wave goodbye to the Sixers if the Sixers keep saying we're going to build our own place. We're not going to sign a lease. And they're in a position of power. They're going to be like, go ahead. Because I know that Josh Harris had said, well, the Flyers are, invited to go to this new place if they want to.
They want to reverse the whole.
No, this is, we talk about the arena downtown?
Yes.
Yeah. It's completely, it's.
No, but Harris said he would accept the Flyers there.
Of course he would, because then the tables are reversed. But this is not unheard of, because we've had the situation in Arizona right now, where for the last 10 years, they've played at Gila River or Jobbing.com while the Suns play at the building downtown. So, but I question whether the municipality wants to have the situation where you have two buildings instead of one. It's sort of asinine, but it may very well happen.
Not to those teams, because they make all the money off the. That's it. It's not asinine to them, right? And in the cities, if you can convince them, because again, the Phillies tried it when they originally were at the Vet and trying to have a ballpark downtown. Back then, they couldn't get they would not be able to get the logistics to work downtown, so it ended up in South Philadelphia. The Sixers, again, it's different times, and the Sixers think and believe, and they're going to try to present it as always with new arenas that the effect that the economic effect that people are going to come out of the arena and spend money downtown. And the fact of the matter is, the pattern is always with the downtown arena is that it's before the game, not after the game.
Correct.
Where that business may be made, but it usually doesn't. That trickle usually doesn't happen. And I remember, and I saw the report when the Chinatown Business Association started talking about the Sixers proposal, and so much evidence is out there. They laid it out like you don't see that trickle. You don't necessarily see that trickle down.
I think we should just touch on something that happened late last week, which was the Klingberg signing.
I want to get to that too. Yeah, for sure.
Now,
I think I was the first out there who said that this was going to be a 1-year deal for what it's worth.
You did.
I mean, because I kept hearing other GMs saying it's going to be a 1-year deal. They said there's nobody out there who's going to sign him for more than a 1-year deal. And it is an interesting deal by the Anaheim Ducks to make, because I think the Ducks, this is a we're not tanking move by the Ducks, which I'm always a fan of.
It's a year though. It's term on it is it's a year.
It's
a big year, and if you're traded.
It's a get to the cap floor deal is what it is. That's what it was. There's a no trade clause on it the first half of the year, and then he has a limited no trade in the second half. So he knows,
if they have a promising start to the season, and then you begin to have that conversation, Klingberg's a big part of it, then you could start to have that conversation. They can start to have and again, I can see why the Ducks would be attractive beyond the fact of obviously the money in this circumstance. But Klingberg does have the opportunity. We can all say, he misread them. Look what he did. He misread the market. And
he fired his agent.
And he fired his agent, who was at his wedding, by the way.
Yeah. And he fired him? Nice.
Well, yeah, that's basically what this happened after the wedding, obviously.
It was probably because he gave a bad gift.
You could say that. I don't know. You have to incur that. But that being said, if he has a decent season, he has a pretty good chance of being the belle of the ball again next offseason. Plus, there's a chance to potentially get traded. If the team isn't great, he gets a chance, but he's doing okay. He's got a chance to be moving to a contender and be a factor there. Being said, John Klingberg, I like him to a point, but I think he's more of he's
a rover,
a complementary defense, a complementary offensive skill defenseman. I'm not trustworthy of him in his own end.
Anthony, he's a Swedish Sergei Gonchar. He's a rover. He's not a defensive defenseman.
Gonchar was especially so. Klingberg, I don't know if he's quite on Gonchar's level, but
I will give Klingberg some credit though. He in the series this year and in the playoffs this year, he did show a level of toughness and fight back that I've not seen from him previously, and he did that as well when the Stars made the Stanley Cup final. But he's primarily an offensive defenseman, and I don't blame him for firing his agent if there was truly an 8-year deal out there, which has been reported by a bunch of people, and that he sort of turned down because he thought that there was going to be more money in free agency. That was a massive miscalculation. So, I mean, if now,
I have a real hard time believing that, but
well, I mean, that's what's been reported out there. And
I know, but I mean that year deal would happen.
He's still at the end of the day, he's still got a $7 million AAV on the 1-year deal, and his chance.
Playing in Southern California is not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not.
But the only thing is that when you look at their actual defense, really, their best defender now is either
Kevin Shattuck
Fowler or Vakanainen, as far as guys who could play defense besides playing offense. They have mostly offensive defensemen with guys like Shattenkirk and such. So
Drysdale.
Drysdale can play defense, but that's not that's not going to show up.
If he's going to be your primary defensive defenseman in year 2,
it's not
your best defender. I think that's
Drysdale will be better than Fowler offensively. So that's again, I just see this as a deadline trade.
I mean, the loss of Manson is huge to Anaheim.
It's massive.
And of course the other, the guy Lindholm, the guy they lost to not Lindholm, right?
Yes.
They traded to Boston.
Lindholm. Right, Lindholm to Boston, right? I mean, but in a way, Manson's even bigger, I was told by talking to people out there.
It is bigger. I think you're right.
They all say that he was the guy who wasn't willing to accept the team not playing its hardest every night. Like, he was the guy who really got into that room and really stirred things up and made sure that everything was always like he was the one who said we're going to make the playoffs before the season to the press. Even when everybody was like, that's ridiculous. You like those kind of players on your team, you need those kind of guys who was like the arrogant. He's like, we're going to do this. We're a good, he believed in everything Anaheim did. And him not going back to Anaheim is a huge, after that's been the case for such a long time, is a huge blow to that team psychologically. Like, that they're like, okay, he was one who believed in us. He chose to go to Colorado, I talked to one of the people who was around the team. And they said, it's really, the players are all talking about it like that. They're like, geez, the younger players, they trusted him, they like, we trusted you to be the guy who was always Anaheim Ducks are best, we're better than the Kings, all this stuff. I was told that they're really kind of dismayed by this. Klingberg also has a little bit of that to him, but not like, he's not that kind of player completely like Manson was. But I do think that Klingberg is, he's a top 4, not a top 2, and that's really, and
he is.
I don't think
he's perfect. He was perfectly casted in Colorado for the role that he was going to play.
Oh yeah, No, Manson for sure, no question about it, no question. So a couple other rumors I wanted to talk about, like so getting some interesting rumors that are starting to flow out there because there are still a lot of guys who aren't signed, and a couple guys who are definitely of interest. One, I know, Mike, you texted me that you don't like this already, but I'm going to get into it now.
Okay, and
that is the rumor that I heard that involved because Puljujarvi signs a deal in Edmonton since we've been here too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
3 years, 1 year deal, 3.5 million, 3 million, somewhere.
3 million. 3 million.
It was a $3 million deal. Mm-hmm.
But largely believe they're going to trade him. Like largely believe this is a deal to sign him, to trade him someplace else. And there's still like the great majority of people I talk to don't think he's going to start the year in Edmonton. So he signs this deal, and then I immediately hear a rumor, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me logically, but I have to put it out there anyway, that Justin Hall could be on the move to Edmonton for Puljujarvi to Toronto.
I agree with everything that you said up to the part that Puljujarvi is traded to Toronto because it makes no sense in the sense that Toronto is over the cap right now. They have to open up cap space to sign Rasmus Sandin, and Puljujarvi makes $1 million more than Hall does. If it's a 3-way deal and the Leafs end up moving Hall to Edmonton and Puljujarvi goes someplace else and they get a draft pick, that makes more sense. If it's 1-for-1, makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, they would like to have Puljujarvi. He's a talented winger. He's a big winger. You could put him with Tavares. You could put him with Matthews. But how do you fit that? You can't. There is no way. So that's why I don't think it's going to happen. 3-way deal makes more sense. Maybe that's possible.
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely trying to.
There's just not a lot of money. When we had Kevin the last show that we did, Kevin pointed out, like, we have 9 teams that are over the cap. We have, I think it was 7 or 8 teams that have, 9 million, 10 million, but those are budget teams and they don't want to spend that money. So there's very little money out there, and that's the problem.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, but even some of the budget teams are up against the cap now. It's like, because with the cap not going up, the cap to have to get to the cap floor is really pathetic in this era right now. And that, you have to really try to be bad, which is, we've seen a couple of teams have done this, right? But you really have to, or you just be so young without any stars at all, which is sort of what's happening in Anaheim.
Yeah.
But this is I think Hall to Edmonton does make a lot of sense on a lot of levels. Like, I agree with what you're saying there. I don't know why.
That's where every ex-Leaf goes to die, is Edmonton.
Right. Or thrive, and I think that, and they're all different, every different situations. I don't know. This would not be the cap space move to sign Sandin if you made it. You're right. And that's the first thing I brought up too when someone told me about it. And they said there's another cap space move that's out there, which makes me wonder if Nylander still is being moved, is being looked at, is being moved around, which, I think is probably happening. And if you bring in Puljujarvi as your Nylander replacement, I mean, he's not Nylander, but there's your player who could potentially be something along those lines. He's not Nylander right now. He doesn't show any signs to be Nylander necessarily in the future, but he's a high enough prospect that he could be, I guess. Russ?
The only thing I don't buy for this, everything you said, I could see possibly happening. Yeah. I don't see Dubas ever trading Nylander. I think Dubas would rather go down with the ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of his guys specifically. And I don't think he's ever shown any reason to want to trade him or even try to trade him.
Well, this year the speculation was higher than in most years, and he hasn't done it. So I would lean toward what you're saying, Russ. I mean, I think he's flying in the face of common sense, because you cannot. I mean, I believe it is now the top 5 salaries. Or the 5 forwards make up, I think it's, or five players, the 4 forwards and Riley make up like 50 million of the 81 or 82.5 million cap. And that's the most percentage, the greatest percentage of any team in the NHL, higher than even Tampa. So, that, and they've not won anything. So how can you keep that same group when they haven't won anything? He believes that they eventually can. He's betting his job on it, and this year, he's rolling the dice.
You will see if it actually if
Yeah.
it goes that way.
The other one that's flying around out there is Phil Kessel, and perhaps possibly being moved back to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then also Anthony, the Flyers. The Flyers and Phil Kessel came up with me when I talked to a source who was down the shore in Philadelphia, a Philadelphia executive who I saw down in Margate, New Jersey. Who told me that Phil Kessel's definitely is in their plans if it works out if a certain set of circumstances happen, I guess. But that
you have to wait till after the season starts and after Ryan Ellis gets put on LTIR.
Yeah, they'd have to, unless he can. For what he would potentially garner in a contract, but I would think the LTIR has to happen first.
The chatter out there is Kessel, wherever he goes, is going to go for basically the veteran minimum, and maybe Philadelphia makes sense since he played with JVR all those years in Toronto, and they're friends and were line mates. But I know Elliot Friedman reported Edmonton as a possibility.
Edmonton, I heard a little bit more. It was Edmonton was a possibility there. Again, I think he's at the point of his career too, where it's like if he is going to go vet minimum, then he's going to probably try to go to a team that's got a chance to win.
Correct.
And he'd be a complimentary role. Whereas in Philadelphia, I think a combination of he's going to have to, how well will he and John Tortorella get along? I mean, that's always in the room there. You have to look at that in terms of how that will go. Right. What are the expectations of the role that he would have? And again, there has to be certain circumstances and certain other roster shoes to drop. LTIR for Ellis obviously being a part of that as well.
Yeah.
But that's one of their ways of trying to sell the offseason to the Fire fan base. I don't know if Phil Kessel's going to get the pulses.
You know what this reminds me of, Eck? This just shows me how split the organization is on what they actually want to do.
Yeah, you sign a Kessel.
You're basically,
but you can also say, Eck, if they do sign a Kessel to a reasonable contract in this circumstance, if they are a team that's looking to, they know they're in a transitional state and they know they'll flip him potentially at the deadline for possible assets if he has a decent season for them.
Right.
That's how you want to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, and it does remind me of like someone they really see him actually as bringing them some transitional speed. And that was, and that is, and Kessel is obviously, of course, still very fast. He's still got his speed, and they don't feel that they're quick enough, and they weren't obviously quick enough last year at times. They looked slow against certain teams. So they see him bringing some speed. And obviously a guy who has, it does remind me of some, my friend who was with me said, oh, this is like Mike Bullard. And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Like, it kind of reminds me of like the good old days of Mike Bullard and Dan Quinn being a Flyer.
But again, if he is lackluster, if he does not bite back defensively,
right,
it's going to get ugly real quick.
For sure. That's definitely true. That's definitely true. The PK Subban stuff is the other thing. We're asking in the chat room, a couple questions in the chat room. I know Montreal would bring him in. And people, and it's funny because I've had this discussion with so many Montreal fans about this, and they all are convinced that they wouldn't bring him in. They wouldn't bring him in. There's no way. He was terrible in the locker room. It was.
Yeah, but everybody's gone from when he was in the locker room. So that, but why?
Yeah, and his locker room presence is not awful. Like people, he's an arrogant guy for sure. He's a cocky, but so is Dave Manson. Like I just talked about, like there's guys who are like, those guys aren't the worst thing in the world to have around sometimes. PK is is that way to a degree, but also is a hell of a teammate. Like, I remember talking to Danny Briere, who played with him briefly in Montreal, and he said he was one of the greatest teammates I've ever played with. I don't get it. I don't get why people would say this kind of stuff about him. So, would he go back? He, obviously is a kind of a legend in Montreal. He really was one of the players. Of all the players I've ever seen traded from one place, he was the most upset to be traded from Montreal of any person I've ever seen.
But I think the fact that he's a legend in Montreal is the reason why he will never be signed by Montreal. I'll be very shocked if he's signed by Montreal because he's a marginal player now. He's probably a bottom pairing defenseman. And with his reputation and him being a former Norris Trophy winner, I don't think he's going to accept being a 6-7 on that team. If he goes to that team, he's going to expect to play. And they're really in a rebuild situation.
Yeah,
so
I don't think he's going to get signed by anybody. He might get invited into a camp, but I don't think he's getting signed to a contract.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance. And I've had nobody tell me this. I'm just making a supposition here. I think there's a good chance he gets a training camp invite from Toronto.
Sure, I can see that
because he's from Toronto. He wants to get into media after his career is over with. Maybe he flashes something, and somebody out there thinks that he's got something that's still left in the tank. And if you play on a PTO in Toronto, you'll attract attention. I just don't think it's going to be Montreal. I'd be shocked.
Yeah. I mean, it isn't, like, I think there's a better chance he doesn't get signed anywhere. I agree with you. Right. But I would be very curious if he would accept a training camp invite type thing, or if he would just go into media. Like, I think he might just go into media because there are people, I think some of the U.S. outlets already like him a lot, enough to bring him in.
Well, I mean, they used him in a short-term fix. I don't know.
Sportsnet used him a couple years ago, and ESPN used him this year. So, I mean, he could make that jump. But what is he, 32, 33? I mean,
doesn't matter the age.
He might think his career is not over with, Russ.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah. A little bit of news here, guys. According to Michael Russo, according to sources that he has, that Kirill Kaprizov leaves Russia early, will return to Minnesota on Tuesday. So these are sources. So it looks like maybe the Kaprizov.
That's good news.
I mean, they were talking about
They
were talking about all the phoning up of IDs and stuff. Sounds like he bought himself out of trouble. That's what it sounds like.
It's a scary situation. So
yeah,
happy he's all right. Yeah, really scary situation. All right, folks, that's all the time we have time for today. We really appreciate everybody jumping on board, everybody joining us, and thanks for watching the show. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey, and stay tuned for nothing on Chikrin yet, guys. We'll look into that one. Take care, guys. See you.